This is Jets FM on the OFN. Jan Levine, Greg DePalma here to preview the 2020 season. And Jan, it is here already, thank goodness. No preseason games, of course, a crazy offseason, a ton of injuries. But we're here. And when we talk again to recap the game a week from Sunday, it's about within a half hour after the game. So it's probably going to be about 4:30. I think one of the first things we're going to discuss is how freaking weird it is with no fans.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think two things. Well, first of all, um, you and I are not both huge proponents of preseason games, but I do think we understand a little better now the rationale and reason for at least a handful of those games because I'm very concerned when real play starts, the roughness that we're going to see on the field is going to be rather palpable. So I'm one of those that I would have liked a couple of preseason games just to kind of work out the kinks, get used to the system, maybe see a couple of bodies and new faces that we haven't seen. But this year as a whole is, as we all know, a aberration. We hope, and one that we're kind of all rolling with the punches. So yeah, about another week and a half or so, NFL action will be here. A week from Thursday is clearly, obviously, the opening primetime game on Thursday Night Football, and then right into the first week of games.
Yeah, and I think if if we had, let's say if this was a season had come after barely missing out of the playoffs, and this was our year to be a division, sort of like Buffalo, maybe just got made the playoffs, and now this is our year, I'd probably be a little bit more upset. But I think this is actually not a bad year for this to happen for the Jets, for their growth as a team, because it's just so screwed up. Uh, there's so many factors that are going to come into play. They're going to be just so weird. Uh, chances are, even though things have been great at practices in training camp regarding players not getting hit with COVID too much, they haven't traveled yet. So once they start traveling, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, baseball's a little bit more different because you travel, you're away for 3 days and 2 nights kind of deal. So they're a little bit antsy, and there's so many games, especially now they're condensed that it's like there's no days off. So I can understand why these young kids want to try to find a way to get out and do something, and then they can kind of catch something. I just don't see that in the NFL. I think you're going to travel. And I think wherever these teams are going to travel, I think there's going to be some really strict situations, some lockdown situations where you ain't going anywhere. And and I think that hopefully will help the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, you're probably traveling. Well, you're probably traveling on a Friday for the most part. I don't expect teams to travel on a Saturday to get there before a Sunday game day. I just think that that's cutting it a bit close. You'll probably see a lot of travel on Friday. You'll be in the hotel on Friday night whenever you check in. You'll have all day Saturday in the hotel. I don't foresee, as you said, in terms of lockdown, them allowing them to get out of the hotel to take the risk of being exposed to something. Although, as we all know, it could happen in the hotels. But I do think a lot of things will be even more segmented than even usual. And then, for Sunday, you go right to Sunday game day and you fly home. Even now, the Jets used to spend Saturdays and Saturday nights, especially at a hotel in New Jersey, in northern New Jersey, not far from the stadium. So I think that's going to be the same on what's going to happen on home games this year. I don't foresee them changing it, and you'll see the strict protocols that are being enacted. And there are some additional protocols being put into place if somebody does test positive, how they sequester somebody on the hopes that if it does happen earlier in the week, then maybe they'll be able to be recovered to a certain extent and be able to play on a Sunday. But I think we're all traveling in uncharted territory right now and just going to have to adjust as best as possible.
All right, so let's get right to it. Just a couple of moves, though, from our last show, and not surprising at wide receiver
Yeah.
because everybody's hurt. And the Jets picked up DJ Montgomery. I'm not sure how much time he's going to get with the team, but he's an undrafted kid that was placed on IR last year for the Browns. Played at community college, played at Austin P. So he's got a lot of development ahead of him. If the Jets keep him on the practice squad, then apparently they like something there. And then, of course, the big one was Dante Moncrief. Big surprise, another former Colt joining the Jets. He had, of course, his best years with the Colts, and he had his best years with Andrew Luck and the Colts. Because if you look at it, in 2015, That was a big year where he had 64 receptions and 6 touchdowns. Most of that damage was done with Luck before Luck got hurt that year. Then the injury started for Moncrief. He only played in 9 games in 2016, even though he had 30 receptions and 7 touchdowns in 9 games, but dealt with injuries. And that's the reason why the Colts just didn't feel like that he wasn't worth re-signing him after 2017. He was with the Jags, a so-so season, but Blake Bortles was his quarterback. And then last year, Pittsburgh and Carolina was a waste. So don't really know what they have here. It's a smart move because at this stage of his career, he's still in the prime of his physical shape. And this is his last chance, really, that if he wants to make a stamp for himself in the NFL as a regular receiver, he's not going to get a better chance than with the Jets this year.
I mean, the Jets wide receiving crew has been next man up seemingly all summer camp, and right now we're in another realm of that because of all the guys they brought in. Guys, I think today in practice, a couple of guys left early just for some cramping and some other reasons, and we talked a couple of times already in terms of the myriad of injuries. I mean, you look at obviously Perriman, you look at Mims. Those are the two big names that are hurt right now. Vincent Smith, we talked about, was another guy we thought would pan out.
Everybody's hurt.
Everybody, it's just seemingly, it's just unbelievable that they're getting guys hurt. And the problem is a lot of these guys are learning a new system and clearly learning a new quarterback. So you're losing valuable on-field time to kind of build some chemistry with that guy, with Darnold, and then you go into game action. And Perriman hasn't seen a ton of action with him in camp. Clearly, Mims has not seen any action at all really right now with him in camp because he got hurt in initial lead up into the camp itself opening. And Vincent Smith has some experience, but he also could have benefited. So their wide receiving crew is going to be a little bit rough once the season starts.
And expect Crowder and Herndon to get a ton of catches early on. And maybe even Hogan.
And I think Ryan Griffin's going to get a lot of touches also.
And
I think they'll go a lot of 2 tight end set based upon the number of injuries to try to maximize playmakers on the field. And we know what Griffin did last year when Herndon was out. So we know we can catch the ball. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's not going to be a good thing. So hopefully they get some of these more exciting down the field athletic players to touch the ball. You know, you don't want Sam Darnold throwing the ball to Jamison Crowder in the backfield, to Bell and his tight ends all day long. That's going to be pretty boring. But again, I think Mims, as we talked about it, I think if you have no expectations about him this year, is the best way to go about it. Even Cager, who was doing well, got hurt. It's nice to see Campbell step up and get an opportunity. Look, Chesson's played, Malone has played. So the guys that had little chance to make the team are now getting a realistic chance. So that's the good side about this, is that hopefully, and these are still young receivers, and we talked about it a few weeks ago with some of these receivers, decorated college receivers who were drafted in the early to mid rounds. They have talent, and we'll find out whether or not any of them could take advantage of their situation.
Absolutely. Look, you're getting the opportunity as a free agent coming on board, or somebody who was signed and was undrafted. All you're hoping for is an opportunity to make a name for yourself and to stand out. And you clearly are getting that opportunity. If these guys don't make it now, they can't blame it on the fact that they didn't get a realistic chance. They had that chance. They just didn't necessarily take advantage of it.
The good news is that the offensive line has not been hit with injuries. And I'm talking about little 1 or 2 day deals. You know, that's fine. But we haven't had a rash of injuries along the offensive line. That's huge. And Sam Darnold is healthy so far. That's huge. And let's start with Darnold because, look, I know that what he's dealing with. I get it. But he's at this stage of his career. Second year in the system for the first time. I don't want to hear any excuses anymore. I just don't. I want the kid to go out and start making the plays that he's supposed to make, being consistent the way that we need him to be consistent. You're going to make mistakes now and then. Even the great ones do. Just make sure that it's a mistake. You move on. Don't make another one. And especially what we saw last year as the team started winning games with him. We need to see that next step. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't want to hear about, he's doing so well and he's a great leader and he's got everything that you're looking for. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I want to see it on the field this year.
In a perfect world, you would take the game against Dallas, bottle it up, sprinkle it over 16 games, and you'd have that all the time. Clearly, we obviously don't live in a perfect world. Darnold, as you mentioned, third year overall, second year in his system. We also talked a couple of times, right, that he's playing for a GM that didn't necessarily draft him. So he's got a little bit of an uphill battle because we know GMs have a tendency to be enamored and fall in love with the guys that they drafted as opposed to people they may have inherited from another leadership group. Darnold missed, in my opinion, some valuable offseason development work this year because he could have used the time based upon if it was more open and you had your summer camps and had your OTAs working more so with
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
But again, but I'm
No
saying is, all I'm
excuse.
saying is that would have helped him.
I
But
know.
as you said, this is a year where we need to see tangible growth, right? We all talked about how young he is, that he's still only 23. He's younger than a lot of other quarterbacks who are being drafted and stepping into
Absolutely.
situations. So,
Absolutely.
but we do need to see the growth. The offensive line has been revamped. Now, whether or not it's going to be better, we still have to wait and see. But he has a
Oh,
whole
better
new
be better.
revamped offensive line. Um, Look, he's not stepping into the perfect situation because of all the injuries of wide receiver. So he does have a little bit of an uphill battle. But to me, the key is there's one thing about making a mistake. So if you miss a read or you miss a connection or a completion, it's another thing about making a critical mistake or sabotaging yourself. And unfortunately, last year, what we saw at times too often was he made that stupid mistake or sabotaged a drive by throwing in a situation or throwing into coverage that could have been avoided if he just had taken the smarter play. And to me, I don't want him to lose his aggressiveness, but he also needs to be smart because too many of the throws last year we saw are ones that just you look at it and you go, what was he thinking? Those are the ones that he needs to eliminate. The ones where we look up and go, I don't understand what he was looking at and what he was thinking by making or attempting that throw.
And look, and that's why I don't judge him on last year. I don't judge though. That's okay. I mean, I'm not being critical of him saying he needs to step up because I've been disappointed with him. It's just been long. Now's your time. It's been a few years. The elite quarterbacks only need a couple of years, and then they take off. And now, no excuse with the system or any of that. You do have a better offensive line because I do blame a lot of his poor play, or some of it, maybe just as much or most of it on bad offensive line play. I mean, here's a young kid trying to learn how to play in the NFL, and he's got a below average offensive line he has to deal with not a great running game. And I can see that being an issue and maybe even carrying over. And then you wind up forcing things that you shouldn't. When it looks like, well, you weren't really under pressure there. But yeah, but maybe that wasn't about that play. Maybe it was about the 5 or 6 other times when he was harassed. So I am willing to forgive everything that has happened from this kid, including the mono, including the injuries. I've never slammed this kid, but now it's time. This is the year where if he doesn't play well, he's gonna get criticized.
He has no choice but to get criticized, right? Because he's in the position where he should be setting himself up for a big payday. If he's going to want that big payday or to prove he is the franchise quarterback, that entails playing like that franchise quarterback. And I don't think any of us have questioned his leadership skills, but it's a matter of he has to do it on the field. It sounds great on paper, and he seems to say
Yes.
the right things, but now it's in terms of performance on the field, much less in terms of potential and opportunity.
And he also, again, I think the one thing about his game overall that is clearly going to have to be improved is his deep passing game. This is just the way the league is. And you have to be able to come up with big plays in this league. Yeah, we've seen it. Robbie Anderson and him would come up with a couple of plays a year and it would be exciting. It has to happen more often. And it has to happen with more than just even Perryman taking over for Anderson. Got to be able to find ways to get because he's going to have it. As long as these guys get a little healthier, of course, he's going to have the opportunity. He's going to have an exciting tight end who was ready for a breakout last year. Maybe, hey, didn't happen last year. This is the year. So, and a better offensive line and hopefully also a better, deeper running game, which I don't think there's any question he has. And I don't care about how the offenses looked in scrimmages or practice because you remember the preseason games last year where the first team would go out there and they'd go down and score a touchdown. And in the next game, First team would go out there and they go down there and score a touchdown. It's that the preseason, they looked pretty damn good. And then it didn't carry over. And yeah, we can blame Darnold's mono, and I get it. But the point is that I don't care about that. Let's just do it when the regular season begins. That's all. I don't care about what anybody is writing about in practice and scrimmages. Just when everybody's dealing with crap, everybody's dealing with injuries, everybody's dealing with all this uncertainty. So I don't want to hear any excuses. Buffalo, they're a good football team. They got a good defense. But you know what, Sam? You were drafted ahead of Josh Allen, so you're supposed to be better than Josh Allen. You are better than Josh Allen. Go out and prove it a week from Sunday.
I mean, we talked about last year, right? Week 1, Darnold had the mono. He clearly wasn't 100%. Yet the Jets, at some point in time, had a 16-0 lead in a game that they should have won. And not that I don't know if the season would have completely changed because of that.
No,
because Darnold clearly missed the next weeks, but
yeah, they would have still lost 3 straight.
But again, a whole different perspective going in off a Buffalo win in a game that you should have won, right? In terms of a mindset compared to how they lost that game and what happened moving forward.
Maybe they win the Bengal game because of it, and they got 2 extra wins. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so also Le'Veon Bell, and same thing. You know what? I don't care how he looks in practice. I don't care. The kid doesn't ever play in the preseason. I just care about when the lights are on Sunday, a week from Sunday, that Le'Veon Bell begins to show everybody that he's worth the contract he has. Because we know that after the season, it's who knows whether Le'Veon Bell will be a part of the Jets anymore. But look, I still believe Le'Veon Bell, if you take this player and put him on a very good football team, would have big time stats. So let's why can't we see that on this team? A little of that. I want to see that happen. He's got a better offensive line. There's a better offense. So hopefully Le'Veon Bell lives up to the fact that he's got a year after coming back with the year off. That should help him. It's almost like an injury situation where this should be a better Le'Veon Bell than last year. I also don't want to hear about how good Frank Gore looks in practice. Okay, Frank Gore is not going to get the number of touches that people think he's going to get. I am happy to see Perine looking as good as he's looked. He escaped the injury that could have been a really bad injury, so that's good news. But the kid's looking really good. And just as I said a couple weeks ago, I hope by the end of the season, the last quarter of the season, Perine is starting to get more and more carries as he gets more and more comfortable as a rookie, because the kid looks like he has some excitement in him.
So on Bell, well, I don't put full stock in terms of how he's looked this preseason. And I don't even call it a preseason training camp. I do think that some of the whispers have to be a little bit concerning until you obviously see him on the field, because all you have to go on right now is what you see in practice in terms of him appearing a step slow, in terms of him maybe not having that burst. Also we talked about last year that we hoped that the year off would refresh his body, but your body to a certain extent also gets used to the contact and you have to readapt yourself to it. So the hope is that what he's doing now is just literally working himself back into shape. I'll be ready to go when the bell rings against Buffalo. Gore, I do think Gaze is going to use him. I mean, there is an affinity there. There is a connection there. I think he's going to try to put him into situations. We talk, look, if the Jets wide receivers are as banged up as they are now going into the season, you're going to see Bell split out a lot. I mean, you're going to see Bell used as a wide receiver more frequently and have Gore in the backfield to try to balance out the offense, which may mean this is why Gore ends up getting additional carries. In terms of Perine, he avoided a significant injury. Clearly not good that he's nicked up and has an ankle injury now. But the good part is that it doesn't appear to be serious, and the hope is that it'll be ready for week 1. And yes, as you said, if the season goes in the manner and shape in which we think it might go in, and that the last quarter of the season they're already looking forward to the 2021 season, then I do think Perine's going to start seeing hopefully more and more touches, because we all know that Douglas didn't bring in Bell. We all know, well, we think we know what Gaze thinks of Bell, though part of that just may be lip service also, and that they're going to try to start seeing what they have in Perine as they start evaluating themselves moving forward, especially as if you and I talked about already, and you mentioned that Bell is unlikely to be back here next season.
All right. As far as the offense in general, it's up to Adam Gase. It's up to his coaching ability. And this is also a year in which the team has to take the next step. What happened last year, I don't really think that when you have your young quarterback get mono, and then you have pretty much that schedule, which came at the wrong time of the season, the murderous schedule that we have a hard enough time winning games with, happens when you have to go down to your third string quarterback. All of that, in my mind, for a first year head coach was forgivable as long as they did what they did in the second half of the season, which was win games. So I think, to me, what happened last year, I would have graded Adam Gase as like an average grade. I don't think he was bad, and I don't think he was great. I think it was as good as you could have expected, kind of, under the circumstances. But just like Sam Darnold, now you have to take the next step. And look, CJ Mosley's out till next year. Adams is gone, but these things happen on defense. So it's up to the offense, which is Adam Gase's specialty. Adam Gase and Sam Darnold, they're tied to the hip pretty much. But Gase really has to be able to show not only can he get this team off to hot starts, going to be able to make those changes during halftime, make the right coaching decisions, which we really didn't get a whole lot. If you think about it, when we talked about games last year, it wasn't like a whole lot of games where we were like, oh boy, Adam Gase did a bad job with clock management. Or boy, Adam Gase made some really bad calls at the end of games. I think there was like one game that people were really critical. That was the Bengal game because they said he didn't run enough. Other than that, there really wasn't that type of criticism. But now, again, that's where it's probably also because of the fact the Jets weren't very good. But now, as you're hoping to be a better team, you're going to hopefully start playing in tighter games against better competition. And that's when you need to see your head coach making the right decision under pressure. And hopefully he'll be able to do that because we want him, or at least I think most normal-minded Jet fans would want him to succeed. He's a young coach. He's our coach. Darnold's young. And hopefully that tandem of Darnold and Gase can lead us to a lot of winning over the years. But that's why this is going to be a big year for Gase, and I'm willing to give him the opportunity for at least 1 year to prove whether or not he's the man.
So I think with Gase last year, there's a couple things that I saw. One, I don't think their second half adjustments were anything too special. I think they were actually pretty piss poor times in the second half in terms of coming out of halftime, which is an indication of what the coach is putting into place or them recognizing what's going on. Not defensively, because I think defensively they did a fairly good job. Though at times we also saw, like the Jets of old, that they couldn't find a way to get off the field to get that critical stop at times. Though I thought Greg Williams did a nice job, especially with an offense that was struggling substantially where most of the burden was on them. In terms of yes, he was a first-year coach in New York, but the issues or the difficulties that Gase had in Miami did follow him up here, both in terms of perception of him and then in terms of what was implemented system-wise. Now, part of that was impacted because Darnold was out. Part of that was impacted because the offensive line wasn't particularly good, and granted, to try to build around that wasn't easy. But in terms of look, you can say what you want about the Jamal Adams situation. A lot of that had to do with management. You can say about some of the other situations. I don't think Gase did himself any favors within the room, though I do think this system, hopefully, is a system that can bring out the best in players. And I think this year, as you said, is going to be very telling because if they are able to get healthy by when the season starts, and clearly that's very much up in the air right now, the crosshairs are going to be on Sam Darnold to implement the system, but also Adam Gase in terms of the system that's being implemented. And if either one or both don't particularly do their job, Gase is going to be the one that's kind of left holding the bag, even more so I think than Darnold, because I think Gase is just, even though Douglas and him quote unquote have a relationship, Douglas isn't the one that brought him in, even though Douglas kept him. And I do think that you could end up seeing the Jets start moving on and looking for another coach, especially one that may be viewed as less polarizing than Gase based upon what was brought in. So I do think this is a very critical year to see growth where you can say, okay, look, we didn't get to where we want to get this year, but we see we're actually on the path there. If we don't see that level of growth, then I do think that Gase's job is going to be in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think it would have to be really evident that the team should be better, whether it's losing several games that you just sit there and you go, like, let's say you lose 3 Bengal type games, that inexcusable losses.
We just don't show up at all. Basically.
Yeah, because you're going to have
the second half.
Every team has one.
Right.
Every team. So you can't have 3. So if you have 3 of those where you just don't show up, then you're in big trouble. Especially again, if these, because look, this is another reason why I think it was hard to analyze Gase. He had no quarterback basically for the first half of the season. They lost. It was a tough schedule. They had an easier schedule. Darnold was back. They won their games. I just, there's nothing for me to analyze there. That's why I say it's an average. I need to, but that's why to me, Gase and Darnold are the same. Don't really care what happened last year. It doesn't matter. Now it's a, but there's now the critical time comes. That's why I didn't criticize Gase last year. That's why I didn't criticize Darnold last year. All of that's off the table this season. And that's why it's unfortunate if he does deal with injuries, because to have him again, if they really happen to hurt the team like last year, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. I just, look, they got to keep Darnold healthy first and foremost. See, I think if they keep Darnold and the offensive line healthy, even if they lose injuries to receivers and a running back here or there, I'm not going to sit there and want to hear excuses from Darnold or Adam Gase, because you shouldn't have any. As long as you have an offensive line that's healthy and a quarterback that's healthy, get the job done.
Well, I think the jury's still out as to whether or not Darnold can make the players around him better, right?
That's the idea.
But not every quarterback, even if they are quote unquote elite quarterbacks, makes the players around them better. Like we talk about Tom Brady a lot, making the players around him better. I'm not sure if you can say that about every quote unquote elite quarterback that he does.
Well, that all depends on what you could consider an elite quarterback.
I'm assuming based upon the way you're saying that is you don't think there's a ton of elite quarterbacks in the NFL.
No,
right
I don't.
Now.
I'd probably say there's
Patrick
5 or less.
Mahomes an elite quarterback?
Of course.
Okay. Is Lamar Jackson an elite quarterback?
No. He's an elite runner.
He stood in the pocket and threw the ball also pretty well at times.
If he wants to be an elite quarterback, he has to learn to be more accurate throwing the football.
Okay, Tom Brady, you still think it was elite or no?
Still, it's questionable. I'm willing to give him another year under Bruce Arians and receivers that he hasn't had in several years.
Okay, Russell Wilson?
Absolutely. He's the best quarterback in the NFL.
All right, so Russell Wilson is a guy who makes the players around him substantially better.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
Right. But as you said, if you view him as the best quarterback in the league and the number of guys, it is a rare commodity to be able to make the guys around you better, much more of an exception than a rule, which A, of course, makes a quarterback elite to begin with, but B, you're limiting in terms of the population of those that fall into that subset.
And I'm not saying that, look, Darnold's not going to do that this year, but we just need to see the signs that that's coming. And that's what you need to see. You need to see that, hey, he actually played elite in several games, played very good in others, and only poor in a few. Then that's like one of your, hey, you know what? Maybe, because look, why shouldn't we want our quarterback a top 5 draft pick? Why wouldn't we want that guy to become an elite quarterback? That's the whole idea. When you draft a quarterback that high, when you hire an offensive whiz as your head coach, that's the idea, that those two will be able to develop, and one guy becomes, a really good head coach, and the other guy becomes an elite quarterback. And I do think there is a difference between the great elites and like that, that guy that may be like Drew Brees. At this stage of his career, I would put him like in that he's still kind of elite, but do I think Sam Darnold can become what Drew Brees was last year, which was very good, but not super? Yeah, I think that's still a level that I would be satisfied with over my career. If I can even become that type of player, quarterback that could throw for 4,000 yards, throw for 40 touchdowns, less than 12 interceptions, and make some big plays at big times and win big games. That's what you're looking for. You don't need your quarterback to be the best. You just would like him to be top 5, no question.
I think the jury's very far out as to whether Sam Darnold can get to that level.
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen within a year or two, then I think you don't give him that contract. Why would you want to pay someone? See, Dak Prescott, that's a Dallas thing. And I don't blame the Cowboys for doing what they're doing, because I'm sorry. I'm not paying Dak Prescott $40 million. That's insane. Okay, because he ain't that good. So I would have, especially if it's going to kill your salary cap and everything else that you're trying to do to build your football team, don't you think Sam Darnold wishes he could just slip into a Dallas Cowboy jersey with that offense and play over there? How much better would he look? So you put Dak Prescott in a Jet uniform this year with this team. You think he's worth $40 million? Come
on.
No. So anyway, yeah, let's just hope that we see improvement from both Gase and Darnold that leads us to believe that there's still hope that they could be the answer to our problems or to our losing. And then finally on defense, look, you said it, Greg Williams, he did a great job last year. I mean, he couldn't have been any better. And he's also dealing with injuries this year. The secondary is banged up almost like the receiving core. Even the linebacker Owasu from Baltimore is now out for 5 weeks or 6 weeks. Basham has been hurt a little bit. Desir we haven't seen. Poole's just coming back. But this is all about Quinnen Williams. We said this a week or two ago. This is now Quinnen Williams' time to become or get to the point where it looks like he's going to become one of the best defensive interior linemen in the league.
So I will ask you the question that I got into a massive Twitter war on, and I think you and I have had a conversation on this. So Minnesota obviously was aggressive and went out and got Ngakoue. They gave up a second round this year, coming up in next year's draft, and a conditional probably third round pick the following season. If you were the Jets, and we know they have cap room, would you have parted with that type of draft picks in order to bring Ngakoue in for the year?
What was the contract? How much is he making?
So he's on the tender
this year. Yeah. How much is it?
He's on the tender this year. Whatever.
Oh, he's not. He's making affordable money this year. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's basically, and it was a second and what, a fifth?
Second, and it's I think a fourth that could move up to a third the following season.
Okay. So would I have given that up for 1 year and hoping to keep him there?
Correct.
Yeah, I probably would have.
Okay. See, my viewpoint is, look, we love it.
I don't again, but the Jets had the 2 first, so I wonder whether or not, like, if they just said we'll give you Seattle's first round pick and that's it.
See, I would have done the conditional if he re-signed there. Potentially, I would not have probably given.
Oh yeah, the conditional pick, absolutely.
Minnesota's second is going.
I mean, I don't want to give away my first round pick.
Minnesota's second round is going to be well below where the Jets' first rounder is probably. I think we all think that based upon record wise. Right, you're probably looking a 10 pick spread potentially between the two, at a minimum.
Sure.
Right. So my view on this is, and there's an argument I got. Well, the Jets need to manage cap space. So I'm like, they have the resources this year. My viewpoint is we know how good Ngakoue can be. Do we know if he's consistent? No. But was it worth finding out if he could be successful under Williams' system? But more important, if he viewed Williams' system as being something that could push him to the next level, you've now gotten him in a year early with the opportunity to be within your 4 walls and your organization.
Sure.
Be the guy who can be a pass rusher and then be able to re-sign him knowing you've locked up a position that seems to be impossible to get, which is something the Jets have been searching for years. Why would you not take the chance and the risk to get him?
There's a couple things that we can just guess. One, there's something about his makeup. Whether or not he fits in the locker room. I'm not a Jacksonville guy. I'll find out when I talk to my Jacksonville analyst and find out more about Ngakoue. But I mean, I'm just guessing. Maybe that's one part of it. It's also possible that Joe Douglas is just like, hey man, I don't give up my high draft picks very often, and when I do, I'm only doing it in guaranteed situations. Like if I absolutely know that he would resign with us. But then again,
I mean, the argument I got from people is, oh, look what people gave up for Khalil Mack. And I said, you are comparing apples and oranges in terms of price tag for what Mack went for. And look, you can argue that, look, it's obviously hampered Chicago. That and obviously Trubisky draft pick hampered them substantially. But let's not compare what Chicago gave up for Khalil Mack compared to what Minnesota has given up to get Ngakoue, even for a year. There's no comparison.
And the only other thing that I could think of is when you look at your own roster. And you say, you know what? I like some of these guys we have. I really believe Fatukasi is going to be a player. Phillips, Zuniga we just drafted, Shepard, Quinnen Williams. That's enough guys on the defensive line for us because we want to re-sign those guys and develop them. If I'm gonna take a chance with a player like that, maybe they just figure they'll take a chance with someone that's maybe a cornerback that really fits a need. Because yeah, I mean, there's no question the Jets need to find out whether we talked about this before. Do you want to run a 4-3 or a 3-4? If you want to run a 4-3, a guy like Ngakoue, that would have been perfect. But if you really want to run a 3-4, then you do need to find out whether or not you can go out and eventually land an edge rusher, which just this is something we've been looking for Jet fans
Well,
forever.
that's my point. That Ngakoue could have been the defensive end rusher. The other guy we talked about also was Logan Ryan, which we said would have been a good fit. Now, the Giants are paying him $7.5 million, which to me is not an overpayment, especially compared
No,
to what he
that's fair.
wanted. And it's a 1 year deal.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jets do need help in the defensive backfield, especially given all the injuries. And they have the cap room. And more importantly, it doesn't roll over to next year.
Yeah.
So look, you my problem with Douglas at times is he's reluctant at times to pull the trigger, where I think he needs to be sometimes more aggressive and pull the trigger and take the opportunity and the chance.
Well, he wasn't getting but like you said, they had the money. You weren't losing a draft pick.
Right.
So there's something about the player and the money that they just didn't want to do. I mean, otherwise, if they liked the guy, they would have signed him. I mean, look, I can't answer that question either. Other than I'm not going to sit there and just say he's not qualified or he's too young and inexperienced. He doesn't want to pull the trigger. I don't know about that. Maybe in a couple of years, that'll be something that will say, "Hey, man, that's his label now. That's not good." But maybe there's a plan. We just don't know it yet. So, I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's the Jets could have made a couple of deals and they could have had Ngakoue and Logan Ryan. It could have fit them both under the cap.
Could have been, and that defense would have been a heck of a lot better, which would have hopefully taken a lot of pressure off the offense as they try to get healthy also.
And this is, I think, the other reason why, and this is how we're going to close up. Two quick things. One is that's why I also think this is the pandemic season, that as long as it's not a disaster, I think that, Gase comes back in 2021 and Mosley is playing for the team and they get their first round draft. They get more draft capital next year. And it just could be that Joe Douglas is just, you know what? I don't need to go for it and start bringing in all these veterans and spending all this money. Now, look, I get what you're saying, that the money is just going to get wasted, but maybe he is going to use it for something between now and by the time he can't use it anymore. So we'll wait and see on that. Because this is New York. There's no reason to the Jets the organization is going to spend as much money as you want them to. They're not frugal. So that's the only thing I could think of, is that, look, this is not about 2020. It's about 2021, 2022. And if Ngakoue doesn't resign here in 2021 and Logan Ryan is not here in 2021, then really what am I doing? I'm just guessing. So.
Again, you could be right. Like I said, I'm talking as a fan, but I'm also talking as an analyst, seeing
and you're making fair points.
And with things about that could have been out there that could have improved this team. Look, we know there's other needs that are needing. And look, you may have said it. You didn't say it directly, but you kind of intimated it. This may be viewed as kind of what, quote unquote, a lost year or a transition year, or a year where, dare I say the word, I wouldn't say the word tank, but one where the record isn't a driver in terms of where they think the growth is. Not ideal as a fan, right? Unless you're kind of seeing there's pieces you talked about that are taking that next step forward. But internally, that kind of may be how they view it, and they need another year to implement the system to start getting to that next level. But we've said that, unfortunately, for a couple of regimes now, where sooner or later that starts to get old if you don't start to see the kind of growth that we expect.
Well, that's why even if the team wins 6 games this year, the number one objective is to get Sam Darnold to play like we want him to play like. That's the number one. Yeah, that's the number one objective. Don't care about making the playoffs or not. We just want to make sure Sam Darnold is our future. By the way, Williamson took a pay cut, so that makes sense. $6 million down to 3.5. He got $1 million guaranteed that he wouldn't have had otherwise, but at least he knows he's not going to have to worry about getting cut. And Maher is gone. Sam Ficken is certainly the number one guy as of today. As of today. So. Right. All right, so that'll wrap it up, and we'll talk again when the game is in the books, Jan. I'll be on the air next week to interview Ryan Talbot of the Buffalo Bills. He covers the Bills. He's been on the network for several years, so he's done a great job. So he'll help me to preview that game next week on the show. And then Jan is going to join me every week after every Jets game, about within a half hour after every game. Jan's going to help me to recap every Jet game all season long. That includes those primetime games, Jan. So we'll have fun as long as it doesn't interfere.
I'll get my no dose ready. How's that?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't interfere with the Jewish. What do you actually call it? It's a religious schedule because it's not a holiday. So what is it?
They're called Jewish holidays.
It is a holiday.
And I'll send you the list. So there will be some impact to a couple of games. I'll update the list based upon the conversation we just had here, so you have the updated times and everything. But yes, they're called the Jewish. They're called the high holidays, but also the Jewish holiday season.
All right, sounds good. And I feel better about that. Just call them holidays. All right, Jan, sounds good. Have a happy holiday, and I'll talk to you again a week from Sunday.
Enjoy your Labor Day.